All right, ladies and gentlemen, okay, it is my honor to, it is my honor to introduce our speaker for this afternoon. I've known Phil for several years and first met him at one of the conventions, and he had a booth, I guess that's what they call them, for his organization, and it sounded interesting. And it was right in Roselle, Illinois, which is not too far from where I live in Schaumburg. And went over there a couple times and did some addressing cards and letters and whatever that were sent out. And then we found out about a couple of other projects that we could do right here at our church. And one was doing color sheets. And they were, not quizzes, what do you call them?
Jokes.
Jokes, okay, or like one side would be something like a question, and then on the other side would be the answer, but it would all be kind of cartoon type things. And so I said, okay, we can do that. So we ran off copies of that, and a couple hundred, which is like just a pittance of what is needed, since he has, okay, yeah, here we go. Since he has about 12,000 people on the list for sending things out, I'll pass this around. So I put about 20 copies in a packet, and give people colored pencils, and give them 6 or so weeks to color, and they bring them back, and I take them over to Phil's friends, the offices. And like I said, I know it's just a very little amount that we can do, but we have a small church and congregation, and we also have card making parties, and we're going to have one this coming Monday over in the parsonage. And I asked all my friends, and I asked people to ask their friends too, for blank cards, not get well cards, you know, of any kind of healing type thing, not Christmas cards or birthday, just the blank cards, you know, that you get in the mail from the veterans and all that, and you just save them up. And on the inside, we put a little cartoon, usually Marmaduke or Dennis the Menace, something clean. And so we have people saving their copies of newspapers for us. We put a knock-knock joke. We put a little Bible verse. And then we have everybody write something personal, like thinking of you, you know, Lord's blessings. And then we have tons and tons of stickers that we put around too to decorate it. And then at the bottom we would sign it something like Sharon at Phil's Friends. And then Phil and his organization put these into their care packages. So it's a little bit that we can do, you know, to help Phil and his organization. And I'm going to let him tell his story. And it's a very, very emotional one. For me it was, you know, but we just love having him come to our church. So I think you will all be moved too. Okay, Phil.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay without the microphone? Does that work? Okay. And then I'm going to grab a stool over here if you don't mind. I'm running the Chicago Marathon in the morning, and so I'd really love to sit down during this instead of being on my feet anymore. So I hope that's okay too.
Here's your box.
Okay, thank you. Well, I appreciate the invite today. It's wonderful to be here. One of my favorite things that I get to do is go around and tell my story of what God has done in my life when I went through cancer. I never thought I'd be sitting in front of a group like you today, or any groups that I typically do. First of all, because I hated speaking. I was very deathly scared of it. And secondly, I just never thought this is what God was going to do with my life. And it just, I think, a testimony that shows when you're open to what He has and what His plans are for you. He has a good way of figuring out how things work to the best of His glory. So I started when I was 22. I was a student teacher in a 4th grade classroom. I went to this school called Concordia University, which I said I was never going to go to. because that's where my parents went to and my grandparents. I heard some chuckles. Anybody go to that school at all? Okay, a couple of us? Yeah. So anyway, it turned out to be where God wanted me. And during my senior year, I was doing my student teaching in a 4th grade classroom out in Roselle, in a Lutheran school. And I had been sick, in and out of the doctor for about a year. They didn't know what was wrong with me. I had lost 40 pounds over the course of that year, night sweats every night. So I'd basically fall asleep, and I'd wake up 10 minutes later, I'd be soaked, and that process would be 6 or 7 times a night. I had no appetite, I was very pale, had fevers a lot. In April 2004, I was home with a fever for the entire week. And during that time, I had these lymph nodes swell up in my neck, under my arms, and I knew there was something wrong, obviously for a long time. The doctors couldn't figure it out for the year that I was back and forth to the doctor's office because blood tests didn't show it. Every test they ran showed nothing. And I was a runner, and it's funny that I am running the marathon tomorrow, to me, because I hadn't done much running since then when I was diagnosed with cancer. So it turned out that they took a couple lymph nodes out and figured out, yes, that was what it was. The cancer was confirmed. And it answered a lot of questions for me. First of all, I wasn't angry at that time because I was actually pretty thrilled that they figured out what was wrong so we could do something about it. And I remember my dad walking into my room. He's a Lutheran school principal in Schaumburg right now. He was in Melrose Park at the time. And he walked into my room and he sat down at my bedside and he said, "Phil, I don't know how to tell you this, but I talked to the doctors and you have cancer." And I think back on that moment quite often, thinking no dad should have to share that news with their son. And there's so many people that we know. How many of you know someone today who's going through cancer? Yeah. How many of you have had cancer? A lot of people in this room. And according to the American Cancer Society, they say 1.6, almost 1.7 million Americans will be diagnosed just this calendar year. So that means when we hit January 1st, 2017, there's another 1.6, 1.7 million Americans that will hear that news again next year. And in our lifetime, now what they say for our generation is that basically 1 in 2 men will hear that news. And 1 in 3 women will hear that news. There's over 15 million people that are cancer survivors or people that are living with cancer in America today. It's a very, very large number. And cancer claims a lot of lives. 1,500 Americans lose their lives every single day. Just think about that. 1,500 people every day just in the United States that are going to pass away because of that disease. And I think sometimes, when people get diagnosed, their first instinct is to go look on the internet and figure out, try to research things for themselves. And it becomes more scary than it needs to be. And basically, I never had to look for a doctor. First of all, I knew the great physician, right, who's Jesus, and I knew where I was going to go if it was going to be my time. Secondly, I never had to look for my earthly doctor because someone called my dad pretty much about 2 to 4 hours, somewhere around that range, after he found out that I had cancer, because his friend's daughter had cancer, and it turned out Hodgkin's lymphoma is what I was diagnosed with. And so I ended up at University of Chicago getting treatment. I never had to go look for a doctor because that doctor called me and said, "Hey, there was a friend of yours that reached out and we've heard about your story. You don't even need an appointment. If you want to send your scans in later that day, and then you can come in tomorrow and I'll see you." And so I did. I sent the scans over, requested the scans to get sent from the hospital that I was at in Elmhurst down to the University of Chicago. Later that night, I was sitting in my living room with my mom, my dad, my 2 younger sisters, and younger brother at the time. I was 22. My youngest sister was about 10. And everybody was crying. They were hearing the news for the very first time. And that phone would ring constantly throughout that evening. And I had talked to my parents. I said, "I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm just emotionally exhausted already at this point." So the phone would ring, and they'd go down the stairs, and they'd come back up and say, "So-and-so called. They just want to let you know that they're praying for you." This went on probably 50 to 100 times, that night. But one time, my mom came back up the stairs and handed me the phone and said, "It's the doctor from the University of Chicago. He'd like to talk to you." And so I walked into my bedroom, and I picked up the phone. And what it turned out that doctor said to me was, he confirmed that yes, it was cancer, And he asked me a question. How long have you had those symptoms of the night sweats, the hip pains, the fevers, the loss of appetite? I said, it's been at least 9 months because I've kept a journal during that time. He said, those are symptoms of stage 4B, the most advanced stage of the disease. And so it's likely that you've been in the most advanced stage of this for at least 9 months. And he said, pack a bag and come in tomorrow. So I hung up the phone, I walked in to face my family, and I lost it. Uncontrollably lost it. There were so many emotions going through my mind. Finally, people aren't going to think I'm crazy because I was trying to tell them so often what was going on. Am I going to be able to get through this? Is it already too far advanced, and too far advanced for too long? And so I had all these questions, and I could not be really, I just sobbed uncontrollably. And my family, they tried to come to my aid, but there was nothing really that they could do. So that very next day, I had that bag that I packed to go to the hospital. And I don't know about you, but one thing I don't like in life in general is packing. And when the hospital, the doctor says pack a bag, which is different than a vacation, is that you know how long you're going to be there. So I'm packing a bag having no idea what's going to happen next. So I went down to the hospital. I sat in a room with about 6 or 7 doctors and nurses. They said, this is going to be your treatment plan. You're a young guy. You used to be a runner. And we're going to give you everything that we have, basically. And you need to check in right now. So I went in, had surgery, got a port put in, and later that day I was already getting my chemotherapy. And so my regimen was going to be 4 or 5 days in a row, getting that infusion, then coming home to rest, what they say, for about 3 weeks, and then come back in for an outpatient visit. That would have been 1 cycle, and I was going to do 6 cycles like that. So the first one did last 3 days. But after that, sometimes a 3-day treatment would lead you in the hospital for up to a month because of the complications. But you know what? I can sit up here today and tell you that God is the one who brought me through that. It's nothing that I did. I did stay positive, but I had so many people that were praying for me. And I had God's word. And I had my grandfather who came to my bedside, who was a pastor. And he highlighted all the verses with hope and strength and peace. When I was too sick to open my eyes, when I was too sick to have visitors, I thought back also to the time when I was raised in Lutheran school of all the memory work that I had. That I remember the 2nd grade teacher who was never happy with me because I never wanted to learn that memory work, and I always fought her on it. But she said, one day you might be in your hospital room, or it might be near the end of your life and you can't open your eyes and you're too sick. That's when these verses are going to be important. And she was right. She was absolutely right. And here at the age of 22, I was wondering, is it going to be my time? Is this my time? So people did some fantastic things for me while I was sick. One of them is a group of people put a care package together for me. They all signed their names to the outside of it. It was about 40 or 50 people that did it. I didn't even know half of these people. And that random act of kindness, it didn't even really matter what was inside the package. It let me know, it symbolized for me that I wasn't going to be alone while I was going through this. The second thing it symbolized for me is that I was going to need other people's help. And it was okay to accept other people's help. Because at that time in my life, I was a tough guy. Now, not as tough, but I realized that we all need to work together, and that's how the body of Christ works. And then I had a couple individuals who sent me cards in the mail. Every single week, for 2 years, there were 2 individuals who sent me cards in the mail. And so when I was well enough to be at home, I'd be upstairs on the couch, and I'd struggle down the stairs, out to the front door, open it up, go out to the mailbox, to see if someone remembered me. And every single week, and every single time I put my hand inside that mailbox, I was met with that consistent support that I needed. And so I pull that card out of the mailbox, I go back up the stairs, sit down on the couch. Even if it wore me out for the rest of the day, it was worth it to see what was inside that card. Because someone took time out of their day, their busy schedule, to show me that they cared for me, to show me that they loved me. And one person that sent me those cards was a 3rd grade girl. Her name was Bethany. My mom was a 3rd grade teacher. And so it had artwork on it. And it always had a Bible verse. And it meant so much to me. Another lady named Judy sent me that 2nd card that showed up every single week for 2 years. I didn't even know Judy. And that was the real power in it. Because every time I opened that card, and I sat on that couch, and oftentimes tears would come down my face. And the reason that happened is because she let me know she was praying for me. This woman didn't even know me. How did she even get my name? I have no idea. And then there was always a Bible verse on there. And it was exactly the Bible verse that I needed at that exact time on that given day. And that's how I got my strength. Whether it was Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. No matter what that verse was, it was always at exactly the right time. It was always exactly the right message. And so back to my story, I went through chemotherapy for 6 months. The doctor said I was cancer-free. I was thrilled. I was thrilled to get back into teaching because I was a student teacher when I left. And to back up my story, they asked me to interview for this teaching job about 2 weeks before I was diagnosed with cancer. They gave me the job. I signed the paperwork. I signed for insurance. All of it happened before I was diagnosed with cancer. And because of that, I've used well over $2 million in coverage that went through my insurance plan to this day. And change one little thing about that, and it could be a very totally different story. The other thing is, these fourth graders were really excited for their teacher to show up. For many of them, for all of them actually, I was their first male teacher. And then fourth grade, 9 and 10-year-olds, it's a very impressionable age. And to hear that their teacher is not starting the school year with them, they were excited for me to come. So I came the end of September in 2004, and actually 2005, and they were thrilled for me to be there. And I was really excited because these 28 kids that were in my room represented 28 families, represented a part of God's church, represented an opportunity for me to be very real with these kids of what I had gone through. And so I taught with them until April, and then I got these pains in my hips again. And I knew what it was, but I waited a couple days, and the pains kept on getting stronger. That was a symptom I didn't talk about earlier, but the cancer was actually attached to my bones, and especially down in my hip areas. And that was another thing, it was stage 4B of it. And those pains kept on coming back, and I couldn't get sleep at night. So I called the doctor again. He said, come on in, let's do some tests. They ran test after test, couldn't find anything. Eventually there were about 7 or 8 doctors in the room, and they were doing this hip-guided CT biopsy. And the reason I share this, they put needles basically into your bones while you're sitting there and you're awake. Very hard. How was I ever going to get through that? Well, if I back up my story, I was scared of needles when this whole thing started. And so God is the one who gave me the strength for me to get through a moment like that. And what it turned out is that there were a couple cells that they found that never went away. So it was still stage 4B. It was still attached to my bones. But this time it was different. I wasn't thrilled to hear the news. I was angry. I was mad at God. I was mad at the doctors. I was mad at everyone. I was very closed off. And I know when you read in Proverbs and other books of the Bible, it talks about anger and how much harm it can do to you when you hold on to that. Well, I was holding on to that anger. And so I had to go in that next day and come up with a plan again. I have to go tell my class. How am I going to tell my family members? How am I going to tell my principal? So I came up with a little plan. And I got to say that part was a little easier because I had been through it before. Of who am I going to tell? Who's my family going to tell? How is this going to work? So we had it set up. I went and told my principal first. And later sent an email out to the staff. That very next day I told them, in the faculty meeting, and I was going to tell my students at the end of that day because I wanted to get through the day first with them. And so we went outside on the playground, and we were sitting around in a little circle, which we typically did. We had our little class meetings, and I brought out the Bible, and we read through some verses, and I told them that I was re-diagnosed with cancer. And as little kids are, and they wear their heart on their sleeve many, many times, one little girl started crying. Before you know it, everybody's crying in that circle. And so we talked about people of faith in the Bible and how God takes care of people. And right when I was talking about God's promises, I looked up in the sky, and there was a rainbow. And I thought, this could not be any better timing for that. And I started tearing up. I said, look, kids, this is exactly what we're talking about. God will take care of us. He promises to do so. And that next day, ended up back in the hospital. That first 3 days was the hardest treatment of my life. And the reason that was, it wasn't the hardest on paper of the chemotherapy drugs. It was the hardest because I was trying to do things by myself again. And so once I finally got over that anger, it was in the middle of the night, probably 3, 4 in the morning. And I was just yelling at the top of my lungs because I was so angry. My dad was the only other person in the room. He was on the couch at the time. He worked during the day and slept pretty much every night on my couch in my hospital room. it was difficult. But eventually, we realized that if we're not walking this journey alone. Jesus wants to take us by the hand as we're going through, especially something that's difficult. And so we talk about the fruits of the Spirit of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness. These are available to us as being a part of the Christian walk. And I was able to face that journey, again, in a positive way. I went through some very tough times over that next year. And went through a stem cell transplant where they took my own stem cells out. And that was the most difficult time because I was in an isolation room for about a month and a half. Too sick to have a sip of water because I had such bad sores up and down my esophagus, fed by tubes, on oxygen, all of it. But in those moments, that's when I really cried out to God, and I said, Lord, if it's time for me to go to heaven, I would just ask that you take me. I don't want to be in this pain anymore. I don't want to be in this fight. But if it isn't your will, just show me what you want me to do, and I'll dedicate my life to it. And so through that, when I was well enough, I'd take my IV pole and walk up and down those hospital hallways as I recovered. And to catch my breath, I'd stop at each of the doorways, and I'd glance in. And what I saw absolutely devastated me even more than cancer itself. I saw kids who were going through this all alone. I saw adults who had no one who's coming to visit them. And at that time, I knew all I could do was crack a smile to them. But if I was going to get through this, I wanted to help them more in the future. And so it started out where I was just going to write a book. I wanted to share people, a story. But a nurse walked into my room one day and said, Phil, I think there's more here than a book. I think you should pray about it. And within that next 24 hours, I had people by my bedside. We were signing paperwork to start a 501c3 to help people in the same way that people helped me. To see any that were out there going for cancer patients, to help people through care packages, to help people through weekly cards, to pray with them, and to visit people. And underneath all of that, the mission, providing Christ-centered support and hope to those affected by cancer, is really how to equip the church. One way is everybody knows someone with cancer. You can request these care packages for free. You can take them to somebody. And so that's one way, is just being able to equip the church to reach out beyond the physical walls, which so many people are used to staying inside those physical walls. And the second thing is to meet people where they are, in hospital rooms, to visit them, to let them know they're not alone, provide a ministry of presence for them. So I am a 2-time cancer survivor. I've been cancer-free for about 10 years now. And all glory to God for that. It's actually 11 years. And one person I didn't tell you about that's very important and special to me in my life is my wife, Carrie. When I was diagnosed with cancer the first time, it was our 2-year dating anniversary. Everybody told her she should leave. And we were getting ready to break up. But she stood by me through that entire time. And she encouraged me. And she opened up her Bible. And when I'd get weak, we'd read verses that were helpful for that. And we'd pray together. After I was cancer-free, we got engaged. We were really excited. 3 months away from the wedding. But then I get the news that cancer's back. And so we postponed it about 1.5 years. And now we've been married for 10 years. And we have 2 little boys, Graham and Hudson. They're 3 and 1. And it's just a big blessing. When I look back, or when each of us, individually look back on our lives, you can see how God showed up constantly and always met a need. And a lot of times it comes through other people. And I'm sure we all have countless stories that we could share. But Phil's Friends has grown from supporting a little girl named Jenna. And she was 4 years old. She was our very first patient. When I had an outpatient treatment, I would sit next to Jenna, and I would get my chemo infusion. Well, there's always Jenna and her mom, and Jenna had this little doll named Mandy. And so the nurse would come in, and it would be time for me to get the needle in my arm. And so the nurse would look at me, then look at Jenna after I got my needle and say, look, Phil can do it. He can get through this. Then it was Mandy, the doll's turn. So Mandy would get a little needle in her arm, and then again the nurse would look at Jenna and say, look, Mandy can do this. And then Jenna worked up the encouragement for that. And she was our very first care package recipient. It came in like a little box from Walmart or something, a little basket from Walmart. There were only a couple things in there, a teddy bear and a couple other items. Well, now Jenna is in high school. She's gone through brain cancer 2 different times. Just to show how cancer affects a family, That family decided after Jenna went through brain cancer to adopt because there was other instances of brain cancer in her family. And so they went to China and picked up little Abby. Well, they brought Abby back, and Abby was having trouble with her eye, so they took her to the doctor. They found out that Abby had cancer in her eye. So they had to take her eye out and all that, and people can look at it without faith and say, what a miserable story. But if you talk to Jenna's parents, they're actually very excited, and because this reason, if they would have never adopted her from China, that cancer probably would have gone undetected, and little Abby probably wouldn't ever be with us, today. And so Jenna's dream for her first job that she told me about 6 months ago is that she wants to work for Phil's Friends. So she's counting down the years every time I see her of when she can have that job to work in our Hope Center. And so she's only a couple years away. And I asked her, I said, well, why do you want to work at Phil's Friends? She said, because I went through cancer, you guys supported me, and I have a story too of what God has done in my life. And that's exactly it. If we can all look at our lives in that way, we all have stories of what God has done in our lives, to be able to share that with other people. The power of story is very, very powerful. And so I want to show you a care package that goes out. They go out in decorated boxes. So this one, it's got a couple bullfrogs on it, it looks like. What kind of frog do you find on a farm? A bullfrog. What do you get when you cross a toad and a rabbit? Ribbons. How does a frog feel when it has a broken leg? Unhappy. So all of the boxes that we send out, there's two ways we get the care packages out. One way we visit with patients in hospitals. The other way is they show up on people's doorsteps anonymously across the United States. Jenna was the very first patient we supported. Now we support 8,500 cancer patients and their families every single week, whether it's through a visit in the hospital, a card in the mail that comes consistently, or through prayer, or through these care packages. So we have separate care packages for men, women, kids, and teens. And I'll show you some of the items that go in there. One of them is a blanket. I'm going to pull this out, I'll never get it back in the way. So blankets are either made and knit or put together or store-bought. That's how we collect them. There's hats that go inside of there. This is a women's care package. And so hats are knit as well, or there's bandanas or caps. There's fuzzy socks for women. Since we are a Christ-centered organization, and this is the reason we do what we do, it's because Jesus talks about love. And it was 2 greatest commandments. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, and all your strength. And love your neighbor as yourself. And so we want to love people, but we also want to show up there and deliver God's word to them. So we put a Bible in every care package that gets shipped out. A lot of time patients get mouth sores. I have plenty of them. So there's Biotine mouthwash. There's Eucerin and Carry Cream lotions that are non-scented. There's a lot of time that passes, so there's word search books, crossword puzzles. This is a journal, so we have a couple logo items that go in there. I wrote a little note in front of this, and it says, there are times in this journey where you feel all alone. Documenting my thoughts help me process times of pain, joy, and countless tears. May this journal be a gift to you as you journey through the days ahead. In hope, Phil. So if we can get people to put their thoughts down, I think it's very, very helpful. And then also helpful to look back on it and see what God has done in their life. We have Christian music CDs that go inside. That's positive and encouraging. Then we have a water bottle. There is also some chapstick and some Kleenex. And then cards. We always have cards that go inside of a package. And that's what you had talked about earlier. So that's what a care package looks like. It costs about $50 to get one out. That includes the shipping with everything that's in there. And I definitely don't go home and pack care packages every night. In 2009, I left my teaching job. And it was just the next step of faith for me to leave because Phil's Friends had started in 2006. And I couldn't keep up with teaching, being newly married, and getting this organization going. Something was going to give out. And it probably would have been this organization. But this is what I felt God was calling me to do. And so I left my job, and at that time I had parents of students in my class who come in, they had keys to my house, and there came a point where I couldn't give out any more keys to my house. Also I needed to be able to separate work life a little bit and home life, and there was no separation at the time. But we grew out of, that was the first thing that we highlighted, was that we need to get into a public facility somewhere in the community so we can get more people involved. And so 4 years ago, we established the Phil's Friends Hope Center. And what that is, last year we had about 6,000 plus volunteers that walked through those doors. And it's a 90-minute volunteer activity. They pack care packages and make the cards for patients. It's something I want to invite all of you to, if you haven't been out there before. We offer groups during the week as well as Saturdays, also in the evenings. And it's something where we can accommodate up to 50 people at a time. And we have some volunteers that come consistently every single week, probably a pool of about 80 volunteers that come every week and work on these packages and cards as well. So the nice thing about it is that we get a lot of people that step in there to that Hope Center, whether it's companies such as Deloitte or McDonald's or other groups like that, or schools, kids, classrooms as young as first grade that come in, or community organizations. We get definitely a lot of groups that come in that don't have any walk of faith in their life at all. And so that's a great another opportunity for us. When we look at this organization, we look at it 50% for the patients, and 50% of it is about the volunteer. Because we all need something tangible to work on it at some time to be able to support others. And it's also part of the healing process for families and friends that have someone else that's going through cancer. It's helpful for them. And so we dream of the day at Phil's Friends. We'll have these Hope Centers in different major cities across the United States. I just picked up keys last week for our second one. Somebody donated space for 6 years in Crown Point, Indiana. And so we're going to open up that one in January. So if you know anybody in Indiana, you can spread the word that way, but we're going to do things the same way that we're doing out in Roselle. And then also, these cards that go out every single week, there's opportunities for you to work on them, schools to work on them. Basically, people can work anywhere on these cards. And on our website, philsfriends.org, you can go there and you can find different templates that can be printed out. Those can get mailed into us. And again, it's about 8,500 people a week that get a card from us. Some of those people have been on the list for 2, 3, 4, 5 years already. But it's getting that consistent support is very, very important. The last thing before I open up to questions, I want to talk about our hospital program. This is another very exciting part of our ministry. 3 years ago, this lady named Carolyn came to me and said, "We heard about your ministry on Moody Radio, and I want to visit patients at Northwestern where I was treated." And I said, "Well, that's great. You can set up a meeting. We'll come down and we'll meet a little before then. If you want to pull together the different people on your floor, which are oncology nurses, social workers." So there's about 10, 15 people that are around the table. So Carol and I shook hands. We went in. She said, "How's this going to work?" I said, "It'll be fine. And we're just going to show the care package, tell our stories." So I told my story. I showed a care package. Carolyn told her story. And a lot of those nurses and doctors, they knew her already because she had gone through leukemia 2 times at that point already at that hospital. And they looked at us, and I wasn't shy about, "Hey, we're a Christian organization. I don't want to hide that from you." Because I know in the back of their mind they're thinking, "Well, how's this going to work? We've been to the website, do all of that." I said, "Well, we really feel the Christian walk is about reaching out in love, and that's what we're going to do. And if people have questions, we're going to answer those questions for them when they arise. But we're going to take each case, individually as we go in." And they looked at us after that. I was for sure I was going to get a no. And they said, "We love your program. We want you to get started right away." So in the last 3 years, our program has gone from visiting the patients on the stem cell unit to now 3 different floors, so all the inpatient units down at Northwestern in Chicago. They built out new cancer floors. They built out new space for us. So we have free space inside of there, access to their computer systems. It's things that you wouldn't normally think could happen or would happen. And so because of this, we built our Hope to Hospitals program. A year ago, Carolyn, who founded the program with me, passed away. She got leukemia again. And so now we have Gina, who's our program coordinator. She's got her master's in social work. She's worked in oncology at a number of hospitals. And she has 5 boys, so I figured she could take care of the challenge. So just last week, because our vision is to not only connect with the top 50 cancer centers in the U.S., but also out in the suburbs, we want to be able to connect with as many as we can. So we met with Rush Hospital. And over the course of 2 different meetings, first we met with their Masters of Nursing program, which we started working with DePaul on their Masters of Nursing program as well. So their students, while they're going through, where they're requiring them to get hours, and they're looking at Phil's Friends for an opportunity for them to get those hours. And so the great thing about it is that they're able to come to us, we put them through our training. You know, this is what it looks like to go in and deliver a care package. This is what it looks like when you can offer prayer, you know, all of those things. And so we started with 6 DePaul students in this program. Now we have another 8 for the next trimester. And now last week when we met with Rush, the beauty of it was we were able to talk with them for their Masters of Nursing, the person in charge of the program, say this is what we're doing at DePaul, and this is what we're doing at Northwestern, and here's how it's working. And so within 30 minutes they said yes to us. So now we figured out in their master's program they need 8 semesters to get through. So semester 7 and 8 is when they actually do their clinical hours, their real on-the-job training. So Phil's Friends is going to fit in semester 5 and 6, where they need to get 100 hours done. And so the beauty of that is at Rush, there's students there, so there's no approval process that they need because they're already approved. They'll just be able to walk upstairs and start with our program. So that was the first meeting they gave us approval. The second one was for all the inpatient floors. They said also yes in 30 minutes. And so these doors are really, really starting to open up. So if there's anybody who's interested in being a hospital volunteer, I'm going to pass out a brochure in a minute, and you can contact us or go to our website and fill something out for that as well. But we really look at that as one of our most exciting parts of the program because we're going into public spaces and we're being the hands and feet of Jesus while we're in there. And people always ask, well, how does it work? And the question I give is the timing is obviously right. You know, God's behind it. We also have all the right Christian people that are in leadership at all those hospitals that are catching on to this because they wanted to do stuff for years, but they can't. And so this gives them an opportunity to work through our program to do that. And once those nurses go through and they graduate, they're going to go to different hospitals. And so our goal and our vision is that they're going to take Phil's Friends with them to those different hospitals. So we want to support patients nationally. We're supporting people in all 50 states right now. And we also want to one day hopefully do this internationally. So I appreciate your support. I appreciate the gifts that have already come in for working on the cards, your prayer support above all of it. And I also appreciate your support for the marathon tomorrow as they're running. My legs will hold up. So that's about all I have, but I'd love to open for some questions if you have.
Tell them, like, where do you get donations for all the things that go into the boxes?
Sure. So we have care package item drives. So you could post one here. Sometimes businesses do this, churches do this, schools do this, where we have a list, an approved list. Say, here's the socks that we're looking for, here's the chapstick we're looking for, here's the Bible that we're looking for. If you want to make blankets or you want to make hats, here's different patterns that we have. So all that's available on our website is philsfriends.org, as well as you can call our office. But that's one of the ways we're able to keep our expenses down, and we're able to grow. We have 4 full-time staff right now, and it'll be about $1 million budget this year to support all of these people. And the reason we're able to keep up with it is because of our in-kind donations. One, our space is completely free, which would cost us about $60,000 a year, you know, where we're at. Mm-hmm. And so we're trying to work that as we grow and expand, is that we can always get the space donated for free. We're not attached to buildings, is one thing. But then also getting these items in, that's how we're able to push our care package costs down. So I said it was about $50 to put a care package down. There's different ways we can get to that $50. It could be a $50 cash donation. It could be going out and collecting things, which also drives the price of our care package down. Yes?
Phil, I'm happy to say our elderly now has been supporting you for, what would you say now, about 7, 8 years. We have a night dedicated to making cards and that. So you were at Oklahoma Avenue in Milwaukee, and that started it all.
Awesome.
Now, would your hospital program, could you do something like that in Milwaukee?
Yes, absolutely. And that's our goal to do that, is to be able to branch out first kind of locally, so we don't have to get on airplanes and try to get things set up. So Milwaukee is a next stop for us. St. Louis is another next stop. We'd love to do it. But what we found is the best way to get into a hospital is if we're supporting a patient who goes to that hospital, because they already have the relationships that we need. And so then it's a matter of them saying, hey, I want to talk to you about this organization. They contact us, and then our hospital coordinator can take it from there to set things up. But yes, we'd love to go to Milwaukee.
Because they've done to me and they're all the extra things that I found about that.
Awesome. Thank you.
They were very careful.
Good. Thank you. Pass out some brochures for everybody.
Bill, I know you can go to your website to request the boxes,
You
right?
can. So if you want to request for anybody that you know, first of all, it goes out anonymously. So a lot of times people say, I know someone in my life, they're not a Christian, but I want to send, I'm not sure how they're going to receive that, or, from you. But to get that anonymous gift is an important way. But on our website, yeah, you just put in your information as the requester, and then their information as the patient, and then we send it out. We ship them out twice a week. And if there's also a little area for special interest, so if they say, oh, my friend really loves cooking, we might have a cooking box on our shelf. We pull that off, and it also goes an extra way of saying that, we love you, and we basically know you.
And I've always wondered, do you have a way of knowing when you take them off of your list? Like, I called one time when the patient
Yeah.
died, and they said, well, we'll send the sympathy cards. They
Yeah.
were glad to know. I didn't know if you,
Yeah,
it's
so the
not on
way
the
that,
website that you can notify them
Right.
if somebody's cured.
yeah, and that would be a nice way to add that on our website, to do that. I'll take note of that. Well, the different ways, typically a family member, a friend calls in, or someone who's gone through, they appreciate the support. So if someone got through cancer, and they're, say, I loved, your program, this helped me so much, but now I want that support to go to somebody else. Other times, there's patients that pass away. I was at a funeral last week, and I was talking with the husband of the woman who passed away. And he said, my wife loved, getting these cards in the mail, the care packages, doing the visits. She was a volunteer. And I just asked that those cards could continue. And so a lot of times we get those calls because it's meaningful for the family member. And this is about people, it's not about cancer, so we'll just continue them on the list. I'm also going to pass out a little card that you can keep in your purse or wallet, or it basically just says, do you know someone with cancer? Thank you. Request a free care package. So you never know who you're going to run into at the grocery store or somewhere else where it could be helpful.